So I'm going to ask you a question that most of you have heard before, and I want you to raise your hand. How many of you see this glass half full? All right. How many of you see it half empty? You know what that is? Is this glass half full or half empty? And some people say it's half full. And you can ask them why, and they'll tell you exactly why it's half full. And you can ask them, is it half empty? And some people say it's half empty, and they will tell you all the reasons why it's half empty. But here's the fascinating thing. They're all right about the facts. They're exactly right about every fact. And yet, the story is different. Same facts, but we tell different stories. There was a dad who one Saturday, beautiful Saturday morning, and he decided he's going to take his little boy fishing. They loaded the truck, made some sandwiches, put the fishing gear, some chairs, everything they needed, and even some swim trunks, just in case they wanted to jump in the water and swim. And they got to the lake, and the kid was just running around, having a fun time. The dad is unloading the stuff, and in a moment, there was silence. And the father figured, I wonder if the boy is playing hide and seek, is just hiding behind the truck. And he just turned and barely saw some of the water by the dock, just a little ripples there, and nothing else. The father panicked, ran, and just jumped with his clothes and jumped into the lake. And for a moment there, he couldn't see anything. Then a little hand, kind of the surface of the water, the father grabbed the hand, pulled the boy out of the lake, other people running toward them, and eventually the kid starting coughing and breathing, and everybody said, he's alive, he's breathing. It's a miracle. And it was a miracle, except for the father. The father couldn't get that image out of his head. He's starting to have nightmares. He was afraid to fall asleep, to close his eyes. Different story for him. And he started to live inside a story that kept him a prisoner. And he kept saying to him over and over again to himself, what if I looked away just an extra second? What if I had frozen? What if I lost my little boy? He kept repeating this phrase over and over. He lived inside a story that caused anxiety in him. And after a while, the wife said, I think it's time for you to go see someone and talk to someone about this. At night, when he would wake up, the wife would tell him, just he's alive. The boy is alive in the next room. He's okay. Just go and see. Didn't bring him any comfort. So the father did go and see someone, and the counselor, patient, wise, let him tell the story, and he repeated the same story. Said, what if I froze? What if I didn't look? What if I almost lost him? I feel like I failed. A sentence that followed him everywhere he went. But the counselor didn't rush him, didn't correct him, just listened to him tell his story. And then one day, she asked him a question. When you saw your boy in the water, when you saw this ripple, what did you do? Well, he says, well, I jumped in. I didn't think about it. Well, why did you do that? Well, because he's my son. Well, did you stop to calculate the risk? What if you never came out? He said, no, I didn't stop to calculate the risk. I simply reacted to what was happening. And then she asked him, if you knew that by jumping in that water, your boy would have been saved, but not you, would you still have jumped in? And he says, in a quiet voice, says, yes. And that was the moment when something happened, and he's starting to tell a different story. Another truth slowly emerged. The truth was there all the time. And that phrase that he was trapped in, "I almost lost my son," was replaced with a different phrase. That was the beginning of a new story. And the phrase was, "I'm so grateful I was there. I'm so grateful I could rescue and save my boy. I'm so grateful that he is alive today." And you know what happened? He started to repeat the different story. He started to tell a different story. And that brought healing to him. He stopped rehearsing the nightmare and started living inside the miracle story. See, the facts did not change. That was a scary situation. But what changed was the meaning. See, this is very similar to what had happened on the road to Emmaus. Two disciples grieving, right? Luke tells us about them. They're confused about all the details, everything that has happened. And they're telling the story in a way that keeps them from seeing Jesus. So what kept these disciples from seeing Jesus? Was it God? Is God playing games? Is he trying to hide from us? Is he trying to say, "Well, I'm gonna see how well you know me"? That is not the Jesus of the Gospels. That is not the God I worship. It's not a God that is playing games with us. It's not a God that is playing hide and seek. It's a God that wants to be known. So what kept them from seeing Jesus? Because they're doing exactly what grieving people are doing. They're talking about it. Well, this was happened. What that? They're rehearsing the facts. They're going over everything we had hoped. All the facts are correct. That Jesus was crucified. That the tomb was empty. It's a true fact. That the women went there and they saw that. Every fact is correct, but those things in the way they're telling them is blinding them from seeing Jesus. They are reading those facts through the wrong lens. That's what they're doing. They're living inside the story where the cross is a failure. He failed, the Messiah. Where suffering means defeat, and where hope belongs to the past tense. We had hoped. That's what they're doing. We had hoped. And then Jesus comes alongside them, alive and well, and they cannot see him. And not because he is absent, not because the facts are false, is because the way they're telling the story. See, this is very interesting about Jesus because he is initiating this. They didn't invite him to come alongside them. He is initiating. He is going. And what is he doing? He's asking them questions. Did you see that Jesus is not in a hurry? 7-mile walk, could be around 4 hours. Depends how fast they're walking. And they're talking. And Jesus is asking them questions. Tell the story. Tell it the way you see it, the way you feel it. Tell it. He's asking questions. He's not hiding his face. Do you know what his goal is, what he's trying to do here? He is trying to heal their sight. But how is he doing that? Because they didn't need new facts. Do you know what they needed? It's a new lens, a new way to look at what had happened. And this is a wonderful thing that I love about Jesus. He loved them and he loves us too much to leave us inside a false story. You are telling the story this way, but it's a false story. And I love you too much to let you live in it, but I'm going to let you tell it so you can hear yourself say it. And there's the other thing that the Bible is talking about here. It says, they walked away from Jerusalem. Well, Jerusalem is the place where the temple is. Jerusalem is the place of worship. Jerusalem is kind of the place that kind of symbolizes the hope for the nation. And they walk away from it. It's almost like two people who have made their mind up. It's over. There's no point for us to stay here. Let's just walk away. Let's go back home. Let's go someplace else. They do what grieving people do. See, their direction tells everything. Here's the thing. When you believe that the story is over, you stop moving toward it. Their feet were telling the story about what they believe. I heard this phrase one time says that people vote with their feet. They're going to tell you what they think with their feet. They may not say a word. In the direction they move. Joe Navarro, former FBI counterintelligence agent, spent 75 years studying human behavior. And he discovered something surprising. It says that the most honest part of a human body is not your face. Because ever since we're little, we're trained how to make things up, right? To smile and nod your head even though you don't agree with everything. We're trying to manage our expressions, right? But he says nobody is teaching us to manage our feet. And we're training, how to behave. So our feet tell the truth that our face will not tell. And this is what's happening. When somebody is done with the conversation, wash their feet, they're going to point toward the door before they say goodbye. Right? Just look at the direction of their feet. When somebody has already made up their mind, their feet move first. And this is what's happening here to Cleopas and his companion. They were moving away. Their feet are telling the verdict. The story is over. We're going home. We're going this direction. But Jesus is there. And this is what I love about Jesus. He is present, listen to this, before he is recognized. You may be living in a story where you say, where is God? He's present. You just don't recognize him. Something has gripped your eyes and you cannot see him. And what he does, he's asking questions. Now, Jesus is not asking them questions because he doesn't know. But he's pursuing them at the level that they understand. And don't we all like it when people ask us questions? I discovered over the years something fascinating, especially working with teenagers. If you ask the right questions, you can get them to talk. If you're trying to talk to a teenager and they don't say anything, it's because you're not asking the right questions. So you have to keep asking. And you ask about sports. Well, you discover they're not into sports. You ask politics. They say, they don't want to do that. You can ask about food. They may not be into that. But maybe you ask them about video games, and they start talking a little bit. Now it's like, which video game? I don't play video games. I don't know anything, but I can be interested. Right? I can ask. And you get them to talk. And you discover, wow, this is what you're interested in. Or maybe it's robotics. Maybe they love to read and novels. I don't know, it can be movies. Ask questions, get them to talk. But you know what they say? Most of us are speakers in waiting instead of being known for being curious. And that's one thing about Jesus. He is curious. That's one thing about he's asking them questions and they talk. He doesn't rush them. He's patient with them. He lets them tell their broken story completely. And this is where I'm going to need you to talk to me. Why would Jesus let them tell their broken story first? Why would Jesus let them tell their broken story first before he tells the story the real way? That makes sense. Talk to me. What do you think? We're exploring together. I'm not tricking you here. Just curious. Why would Jesus let them tell their broken story first? And he's asking them, say, what happened? What? This is that, the other. Why would?
Hear their words out loud. Sometimes we think things, but when you
That's profound, charm, because he wants them to hear what they're saying. Do you hear yourself, what you're saying? So he's letting them, okay. Hopefully they heard, right? Thank you. What else? What else? Why would he let them tell their broken story first? That's really good. Come on, there's more there. Aubrey? Okay, I'm sorry. Say it again.
It shows that they care because he's willing to listen to their story, and it allows them to be open to hearing him out.
Good point. He's like, well, if he's interested in our story and listening and not in a hurry to tell us this and that, then hopefully they'll be open to hear from him what he's going to have to say in a little bit. That's really good. Thank you. What else?
Because if you tell an incomplete story, the listener's brain is going to want to complete that story. So then, by telling the broken part first, he then says, "Okay, now here's the parts you're missing." So he gains their attention with that broken part.
Yeah.
So attention grabber, if you will.
That's a good point, Connor. That's a really good point. It says, tell the entire story. Have you ever tried to respond to half of the story from your kids? Okay, I know what you're going to say. Let me tell you. I have done that. I know I should just be quiet. It's like I don't have the patience with the whole story. I know where you're going to go with that. Sometimes we're right as parents, but it's still good to let them. It's like honoring, right? Someone, let them tell the whole story, right? Thank you, Connor. What else?
Jesus was always concerned first with people, and they were clearly processing a deep grief. So I think he was showing compassion by letting them talk through it, process it, like any of us would need to do that in that moment.
I like that. They're grieving people. They're dealing with deep loss. So compassion. Let them talk. And I mean, this is part of healing. That's why we go to counselors. And what they ask you, tell it. You just hear yourself talking over again and over again because you're processing something out loud. And a bunch of us, how many of you process your feelings out loud? How many of you process situations out loud? And it's more powerful than to process it in your head. And that's why friendships and community here, and we tell our story to different people, and they respond differently. And next time you tell it a little differently. And maybe it dawns on you one day, because you stay with it. Compassion, I like that. Jesus making room for the whole story. Yeah, what else? Mara?
Like you said, we can assume we know the whole story. We may react to that, but we don't know the rest of the story.
Yeah, we assume that about each other, right? I got to tell you, so many folks coming will say, how was your week? What's exciting in your universe? What's new? And we make conversation, and so many dear folks says, it's good. Oh, just my family. Oh, if I tell. And I say to everybody, oh, you're sorry. So many of us, we have stories about extended families. Maybe we should just have a meal and just tell our stories. But we do. And we assume things about one another because we just see each other at church, dressed up nicely, smelling good, right? It's like when you go on a date, this is perfect. And then you get married, and I'm like, ooh, it's a little different, right? So try to see the person you're going to get married with in different settings, but that's a different story. Jesus wants them to feel seen and heard. Isn't that a human thing that I want to feel seen and heard. He's making room for them. Do you know why? Because Jesus wants to meet them inside their story, not outside their story. He wants to meet them in there. Spread it out. Let me meet you inside your story. So he's asking the questions. Because only then he can start replacing it. He says, let me tell you now, and if you paid attention to to the Bible, he said that then, verse 27, Jesus took them through the writings of Moses and all the prophets, explaining from all the scriptures the things concerning himself. Here's a different lens to look at all these things. You looked in this way through this, you got the wrong picture. Look through this. It's clear. This is the story. This is the story. They were not wrong about what had happened. All the facts were clear, but they were wrong about what it meant. That's why it's something they couldn't understand. And they were living inside the sentence that perhaps many of us live. 3 words, past tense. We had hoped. And I hoped. I was hoping. The way they understood redemption and the future collapsed, everything collapsed on that Friday. And when the understanding, when the framework collapses, you don't just lose hope. Do you know what else happens? It takes your ability to see. And that's what happened to them. They lost their ability to see the truth in the scripture, the right story, what the Messiah was all about. The wrong story can make Jesus unrecognizable. And it's not for folks who don't believe in Jesus anymore. You can be a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ. But it's the version of Jesus that you expected to show up. And he didn't. The prayer that you prayed and it wasn't answered. The faithfulness that didn't produce the blessing. The diagnosis that didn't change. I've heard this before. Yeah, I did all the right things growing up. I prayed all the right prayers. Why didn't God bless me? As somebody said. And somewhere underneath all this hard facts of life, it's like that sentence is playing on a repeat. I had hoped. I was hoping. I had hope. Jesus is on the road with you right now, and you're going somewhere, and you're telling a story. And I don't know what story you're telling, but he loves you too much to let you live inside the broken story. Now watch what Jesus does. Now he doesn't just go to them, taps as they walk along and tell the story, taps them on the shoulder, says, guys, let me tell you the right facts. Let me straighten you up. He doesn't do that with them. He doesn't take the shortcut to reveal himself. He is retelling them the whole story. And I got to tell you, this is not the behavior of someone who wants to stay hidden. No, the Lord's goal is never to stay hidden. He wants us to see him with clear vision. This is the behavior of love that refuses someone to stay in a story that is destructive. The Messiah had to suffer, he says to them. It was necessary for the Messiah to suffer. Necessary, not accidental. This did not happen on accident. The cross is not an interruption of the redemption. The cross is the only way for redemption. Calvary was not where the mission collapsed. Calvary was the mission. They thought that the cross disproved Jesus, and they thought that suffering meant that he failed. They told the cross as a tragedy, and Jesus is telling the cross as rescue. Do you see the difference? How do you tell the story? It makes a huge difference here. Look at the cross through this, Jesus is telling them. Look at the empty tomb through this lens. Look even at the silence on that Saturday through this lens. And you're going to get the whole story, the right story. He didn't want them to see his face and try to fit it in the wrong story. If he revealed himself to them before telling the right story, they probably would have gone back and said, he's alive. We were right. He's the Messiah and he's going to save us this way. But once he tells them the right story, that he is the Messiah and he's going to save them, not the way they believed, but in a different way, a better way. What I love about Jesus is that he didn't just come to make a cameo appearance in their story, right? He came to replace it entirely. And there's a sequence to that if you paid attention to Luke 24. They tell the story, then Jesus opened the scriptures before them, then the bread is broken, and then their eyes are open. I find it very interesting that even though they listen to Jesus tell the right stories, their eyes are still gripped, they cannot see him. It's when he breaks the bread, when the stranger becomes the host and breaks the bread and prays, is when the dead is feeding the living and their eyes are open. Wonderful. See, if you insert Jesus in the wrong story, you're going to have false hope. Yeah, but he's there at that table that everything changes. He's teaching them how to see. Oh, I love that. Teach us how to see Jesus, how to see our story, how to see our life. You see, is it not a mistake that you and I are alive here and now? We could have been born 200 years ago or the next 200. I don't know how long we're going to have until Jesus comes back, right? But we're born for such a time as this. And what do? How about we become people of faith who invite Jesus to open our eyes, to understand the times, to rely on him? And do you know what happens when their eyes are open, when they start living in a new story? Do you know what happens to their feet? They turn back toward Jerusalem. And that at night, I don't know if they had a lamp or not, probably not a flashlight, they were not invented yet, but they go back to Jerusalem. They cannot help themselves. Their feet are antsy. They have to go back to Jerusalem and tell the others, the Lord really is alive. Because when Jesus rewrites the story, he reverses the direction. There's something happening. You look at the same events and you see something totally different than you didn't see before. We all live inside a story. When something is happening at work, whatever, you drive and there's an accident, you go home to someone or call them on the phone, you tell a story. We make sense of lives inside the story. We tell stories. The question is whether the story you're living in is true. And there are so many points from which we draw for our stories. Disappointments. It can be misunderstood theology, unanswered prayer, people's opinion, I don't know, podcasts, whatever the story it's complex, multiple points. And you know what happens? If we rehearse those things in the darkness, it can become dangerous for us. They produce wrong conclusions. We may fail to see Jesus, my friends, not because he is absent, but because the way we're telling the story. Is Jesus part of your story? Remember, he's present before he is revealed. He is present before they can see him. He is there. He is interested. He is walking alongside them. He's honoring them on this road. He is already on the road walking with you. What sentence are you repeating in the dark? Listen, Jesus will listen to your story because that's who he is. He will ask you questions so you can hear yourself out loud, so it can come out of your mouth. But he loves you too much to let you live in that story. And I don't know what he's going to do. He broke bread for them. I don't know what is going to happen for you to see him. Will it be a sunrise or a sunset? Would it be a trip to the mountains or to the ocean? Would it be a coffee with a friend? I don't know. But I know this. Staying in the dark, in isolation, is not going to help you. And that's why Jesus gives us community. Did you see that there were two of them and then Jesus came? And that's where their eyes were opened. In community, in talking to one another. So be hopeful. Be open. Maybe the way you've told the story of your life was not the best way to tell it. Maybe it was. Praise the Lord. But the way you tell it can help you see Him or can grip your eyes from seeing Him. Let's pray together.